This is Dr. Realsteen, and I have a PhD in aeronautical engineering, auctioneering, and most importantly, a PhD in street. Voting is the most important thing one can do. If you do not vote, you are anti-democracy, anti-freedom, and are spitting in the faces of all the men and women who died to give you the right to vote. This is the message that is implied and even asseverated amongst the population, voting and non-voting alike. However, nothing could actually be further from the truth. Democracy is not perfect, and the game theory construct that has been put forth to the masses that you must select your favorite choice amongst the paucity of options available, or even worse, that you must select the lesser of evils as it is your democratic duty, is precisely the reason why this institution is more flawed than it needs to be. By putting a proverbial knife to people's throats and forcing them to the voting booth to pick the lesser of evils is precisely why politicians all over the world are underperforming, are horribly approved, and most of the truly productive people of the world choose to stay in the private sector and out of public service. And it is precisely the reason why a reality TV star was elected into the most powerful office in the world. People were willing to roll the dice on a greenhorn rather than follow the path that they have been led down for decades. Government hack pundits, partisan politicians, and community organizers are happy to push the narrative of the derelict non-voter to the public because that is what they are paid to do. And by forcing people to simply vote out of obligation increases voter turnout and increases their chances of winning. Well, so they think. The notion of the compulsory vote, irrespective of the options available, has created the one-issue voter and has caused people to align themselves wholeheartedly with movements and political organizations that do not even represent half of their personal value system. Some people are in the business and are literally paid to increase voter turnout. It is how they keep a roof over their heads. Therefore, they would never tell you that a conscious non-vote is a viable option. On the contrary, they will convince you that it is the worst thing in the world you can possibly do. But do not be fooled by the agenda. Consciously not voting because the choices available are not satisfactory is as viable as simply voting out of obligation to a political party. In fact, I would say that it is a more viable alternative than how many individuals exercise their right to vote, which oftentimes is expressed solely through racial and ethnic obligation or even through family loyalty to a party. In fact, I would go so far as to say that consciously not voting is far superior to habitual voting because it can actually put forth a situation in which positive change to the quality of public servants can actually be made in the future. What determines elections and what swings political parties in power from election to election is the capturing of the independent vote and the independent mind. This is what keeps politicians semi-honest. If a politician or political movement know for certain that they have your vote for the rest of your life and your families and your friends as well, then why bother improving on the quality of candidates and platform that they have? There is no incentive. You are beyond the point of no return. They have you. And if you extrapolate this notion over tens of millions of people, the result you get is lackadaisical politicians and political parties who essentially swing elections merely on a few wedge issues. Make no mistake about it. With all the money that has been funneled into the political arena, the voting stats and response figures are placed under a microscope and examined by many eyeballs within each political movement and party. These people analyze the voter turnout number the most because, especially for the losing party, they become hell-bent on capturing these people in order to secure victory in the next election. Now, a situation in which a party loses and the voter turnout is 95% of voting age population compared to a situation in which there is 45% of voter age turnout, which scenario is more likely to result in transformational change for the party going forward? With a 95% turnout, the losing party will chalk their loss up to bad luck, in which the next time around they will simply have to make some tweaks to the message and emphasize certain wedge issues more, and maybe they will be able to pull out a win. But with a 45% turnout, it will hit them like a hammer to the skull that they did not have a candidate or a message that resonated with the population and energized them to the point where they would go to the polling stations and cast a vote for them. In a low turnout scenario, wholesale positive change is more likely to occur. Transformational change rarely occurs, as the obligatory vote keeps these political parties and movements in a state of catatonia in which they do not have to change or improve in any way, as they will garner a sizable portion of the vote no matter what they do. And yet people are surprised when they see the quality of the politicians who represent them appreciably decline generation after generation.
Monty, I'm way ahead of you. If you'll just open that door, you'll see the next mayor of Springfield.
What'd it say?
No. Bob, come in.
A fine mahawk to you all.
Why, he's even better. I agree. I like the human touch.
Consciously not voting should not be denigrated, nor should the people who willfully choose not to vote be cast as original sinners. It should actually be lauded and moreover presented to the population as a legitimate avenue to express their opinion on an election. Because it is. Independent, swing voters, and non-participants are the only things which keep dishonest bureaucrats somewhat honest, and we should do what we can to add as many conscious people to these groups. Democracy works better than other systems because of the right given to the individual to participate in the selection of their government leadership. Restricting the number of viable options to express themselves democratically does not improve the system. It etiolates it. People who vote out of simple obligation to a party, election after election, with no independent mind, should be the ones targeted and ostracized, not people who consciously sit out of an election or two. People who vote or who have voted for a lesser of two evils are slaves to an insidious form of electoral game theory. The habitual and requisite voter with no independent mind is what fails democracy, not the autonomous one.
So if you are a person who has only voted one way throughout your entire life, you have absolutely no right to condemn a non-voter, as you are a far worse problem than an apathetic person could ever be.
Clueless.